Well, I think that does it for our unboxing. We have some really fun stories to get into also because we haven't talked about this till right now. You and I have actually met before.
We have indeed. So on uh on the topic of when I touched on before, me traveling to America for WrestleMania, I'd hit the first four. I'd gone with a couple different people. My parents came with me one year. The other years I went with a couple of different friends. But for 2019 for WrestleMania 35, which was in New York City, which is right by Greg's hometown, we were like, dude, let's go together.
The Friday before WrestleMania, you and I wound up meeting at like 7 in the morning. I left my apartment in Boston at 4 a.m., got in my car, drove to New York.
Our first in-person meeting was interesting because, as you said, you just drove all the way from Boston. I think had got in to New York the previous night at about 1 or 2 a.m. with my friend that I was staying with. So we just had a 21 or 22-hour travel day from Sydney to New York. So we were just wrecked. And then by the time we got in, I was like, all right, I need to get as many hours of sleep as I can. But because my friend who came with me that I was staying with, Luke, he isn't so much of a wrestling fan. So he was kind of just coming to tour New York City and have a good holiday with us. But yeah, so he wasn't going to any of the wrestling things that we did. However, when you arrived from Boston on that Friday morning, we hit the ground running, going straight into things.
So we wound up meeting in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. We hopped on a train and we got donuts at this place called Donut Factory that was right near where the WrestleCon was held.
I remember I think you had a carrot cake donut and I had a peanut butter donut that was to die for. So good.
You thought that was really interesting having donuts early in the morning when having donuts early in the morning is the most American thing you can do.
Yeah, so I guess donuts are like a dessert. I was like, oh yeah, just wouldn't wake up and have it. Well, I might, but yeah, the prospect of having donuts for breakfast, I was like, yes, of course.
So we grab donuts, we grab coffee, and we're off to WrestleCon. And before we're even in the building, we run into Bret Hart on the street. We run into like Jerry Lawler coming up the escalator, and we're just seeing so many faces up close, walking around like they're just normal people. And I love conventions like this.
Oh, so they are some like as cool as it is to meet like wrestlers and meet people. Some of my favorite interactions is that kind of stuff. Just like watching them be normal people and walk around. Like one year, I think it was in 2017 at WrestleCon in Orlando, Florida. At that WrestleCon, I just happened to walk into the bathroom, and as I was in there, Ric Flair just walks in to use the bathroom, and me and like three other dudes are in there just going like, woo? Like, what is going on?
And here's the thing too, as cool as wrestling conventions are, they're also so fucking dirty. Like
Oh,
I can't even get into like how sketchy a wrestling convention feels at the same time of how awesome they are.
yo, like, I feel like we can say this as diehard wrestling fans, but some wrestling fans are just like the grossest people ever. Like, it's just a cesspool of humanity, but that's sort of that kind of just adds to it. All the different people and different unique vibes of everyone coming together.
Not just that, but the fact that you see some wrestlers up close and you're just like, oh my God, like what happened to you?
Yep. Some of the older guys, that's them. That's what they look like now. Oh,
I think one of the people we were really shocked to see up close was Billy Gunn because that dude is huge. He's taller than me.
I have a story about meeting Billy Gunn. So that wasn't the first time I'd seen him. In my first year to WrestleMania, bear with me while I go on this journey of this story. But it was the year that I was with my parents, and it was Mania 31, so it was in San Jose. We were just trying to hit everything that we could because I was so excited. It was my first year there. I was trying to just hit every single event, which sort of just became my go-to for every WrestleMania weekend. Sleep became a second, and I was just like, do as much as possible. So one of the things we went to check out when there wasn't an Access or a WrestleCon session, every year, I don't know if they still do it, if they have done it in the past couple of years, but there's the WrestleMania golf tournament where you can pay like $1,000 or $2,000, something ridiculous, to go and play golf with superstars. So that was like a pretty kind of high-end thing that only a couple of people would do. But we didn't have anything on, and the golf course I think it was in San Jose, was this beautiful location that we just kind of wanted to go and check out regardless. So we're like, oh, well, we'll drive over there and see if we can see anybody. We might be able to see some of the wrestlers from a distance and also check out this cool place. So we drove down there, and there wasn't really much going on. We were kind of expecting there to be like barricades or like other fans there or whatever, but we just sort of cruised on up in the car and got out and walked in through the golf club, and no one really stopped us. We were just kind of like, oh, hey, we're just coming to, check out the golf course. And people were like, yeah, sure, going through right that way. And we walked out onto the golf course and just sort of started wandering around. And the thing, because we were like, is it even on? Like, there's just, we can't see anyone. There's no fans. We figured that it'd be busy. And the thing that alerted me to the fact that we were in the right place was that we turned around and this golf cart came speeding around the corner, like nearly went onto its two wheels, and the person fell out. And I just looked up and I was like, Dad, I think that's Hornswoggle driving that golf cart. And lo and behold, there was a very drunk Hornswoggle who stumbled out of the golf cart and walked up and whacked his ball and continued on through. So I was like, yes, all right, this is awesome. And for the $1,000 cost or whatever it was that people were supposed to pay to actually play golf, granted I didn't get to play and hang out with them, but we just kind of waited around, and as all the wrestlers came through, we were just like, hey, can I grab a photo? And we got to meet them. And so, yeah, coming back, Billy Gunn was in that as well. So he was one of the guys that was coming through. And as you said, he is just so much bigger in real life than he seems on television. So, I mean, I'm a pretty big guy. I'm 6'4". So, but I was still like, oh my God, like he's making me feel short. And he came on up and introduced myself and asked for a picture and all that kind of stuff. And me and my dad started chatting to him. And immediately he just started like making fun of our accents. He's like, oh, you're from Australia. G'day, mate. And just really turns it on. And he was a lovely guy. Really, really cool.
I love that. That's an awesome story. I remember you posting photos from that too. And I was surprised at how close you were able to just like walk up and just chat with everyone.
Yeah.
It didn't seem like there was a mess of people there.
Not at all. It was such a cool experience.
So then we wind up going to WrestleCon, and we just meet everybody. Even if we didn't get autographs or photos, we just saw everybody there. Do you remember the first people we went to go meet though and get a photo with?
I'm pretty sure Crime Time was the first.
We had a mission to meet Crime Time. Every time we would do a figure order where I send you figures, you would either text me after with money, yeah, or it would be the actual tagline in the payment that you sent me. And it just turned into an awesome thing over time where we were set out to meet Crime Time that day. And I'm glad we did, because tragically we lost Shad Gaspard earlier this year.
Looking back on that, particularly now in light of those events, that was so cool that we got to meet them together. And just because as a kid, I did love watching them, but just because they were part of our running joke and how we met online, and that just sort of is one of the things that connected us. Getting to come together and meet them in person was just a really cool, like, full circle moment.
I'm pretty sure we were the first people to meet them on that Friday as well, because they were still getting their booth set up and weren't expecting us to just show up and start throwing money at them first thing. They gave us a signed promo as well. They must have had a stack of leftover WWE photos for people to sign, because that's what we wound up getting.
Yeah, for sure.
Next, I wound up getting in line to meet Trish Stratus and Leda, which was huge. They pretty much revolutionized women's wrestling for what it's become. I have so much respect for the two of them. It's insane.
100%. I think they're widely regarded as, two of the biggest female stars of all time. They did, when you met them, they were doing their like photo ops together, weren't they?
Yeah, it's funny because a lot of people were in line just to meet Trish Stratus, but I got in like a line with 4 people for a photo with both of them. And I'm not going to go and wait in a long line and be like, no, I'm just going to get a picture with Trish. No, I'm just going to get a picture with Leda. You got to get a picture with both of them if they're doing that.
Yeah, I'm jealous that you got that photo up, because I've got pictures with them both separately, but because they were so intertwined in each other's careers, that's a really cool photo up to have.
That was an expensive photo op, by the way.
Yeah.
Who did you meet next?
I think the next person I met after that might have been Tajiri. So he was another one. again, because this was the fifth WrestleCon in a row that I'd been to, I'd met lots of people previous to that. So a couple of people or a couple of wrestlers that were like mainstays at WrestleCon that I loved, it was still cool to see. I'd already sort of got pictures with in the last couple of years, but every year that they'd add some more obscure names and people would pop up, and Tajiri came up, and I was like, oh, I loved Tajiri when I was a kid. He was like just one of the lower card guys or mid card guys that never did anything massive, but he was always just so intriguing and had a cool look and did the mist and everything. I always just, gravitated towards him. So he was a cool one to meet.
They put him over incredibly well for where he was booked in WWE. He was cruiserweight champion. He was hardcore champion. They let him have an on-screen romance with Tori Wilson.
Yep. And his tag stuff with Regal, so good.
Oh my gosh. His tag stuff with Regal was so good.
So good.
As we walked around, I wound up meeting Colt Cabana, and you don't not meet Colt Cabana and get a photo for $10. He was an incredibly cost-effective person to get a photo with that day. And to see him get time in AEW this year.
So cool. That's sort of given his career a almost last minute fresh breath of air, like, because he's someone who's been in the game for so long. I think he was just one of the most down-to-earth guys because he's just been doing it for so long on the indies and brothering along. But yeah, it's really cool getting him to see him on AEW too.
Next, who else did we meet that day?
So next, I think we hit Enzo Amore, who was a semi-controversial one because I was always like a huge fan of his work in NXT. Like, despite his controversies that have come out since him leaving WWE, when him and Cass were in NXT and that time when they were just still there but about to come up to the main roster, I don't care what everyone says, everyone was a fan of them. They were huge and so popular. And even once they got to the main roster, I always was a fan of Enzo's work. So I think this was shortly after he'd parted ways with WWE as well. So it was one of the first major times that he'd been in a convention like that. So I was like, yeah, 100% got to meet Enzo. And he was cool. He was a cool guy.
And we actually will get into Enzo's one wrestling appearance over that weekend. And it might have actually been the last time we saw him. I think at that point we found our way over to the WrestleCon show.
Yeah, I think we did.
That was a fun show. There were so many names on that card that are so well known now.
Yeah, so I think as well, because I'd been to that WrestleCon show the previous year, and it was a pretty affordable show, I think. I think tickets were only like $20 or $30. So when I was getting everything, I think I just messaged you and was like, hey, there's a few cool names on this show. Do you want to go? And you were like, sure, it's cheap, let's go. And yeah, that was such a fun card.
I think it was like $30 to get into WrestleCon, but tickets to that show was $40, and we also got to go to WrestleCon. So
yeah, I think that was right.
We saw Darby Allin. I think Brian Cage might have been at that show.
Did we see Darby? Was Darby there?
Darby was on that card.
Wow, that's crazy. I don't remember
wrestle that weekend. Santana and Ortiz had a match at that show because we saw them wrestle twice that weekend, and we specifically remember that.
One of the cool things about that card as well was that it featured a bunch of local Australian wrestlers who me and my buddy Kane get to go see all the time. So a few of them, seeing them, we just see them down the road from our place in this tiny little theater, but seeing them have traveled to America and having matches on these shows was, really cool as well.
So Ben, do you remember what happened after that WrestleCon show? Because during the WrestleCon show, we wound up finding out that two guys that we were in a fantasy wrestling league in were there working that WrestleCon event. They worked at the space that the event was happening.
Yeah, which was crazy because I think they just happened to put in our page or our group chat that like, oh, look, this is pretty cool where we are, guys. And we were like, we're there too. Where are you guys? And
yeah, one of them posted a photo with Kevin Nash, and we're like, we just saw Kevin Nash.
Yeah.
Hey guys, me and Ben are at the same venue as you guys. And afterwards, because the two guys were working the event, they let us get into the ring and the four of us took a photo together. And that was
really cool.
That was such a nice touch to that. It was so interesting.
It was. Had you ever been in a ring before that?
Once.
Okay.
And weirdly
cool.
enough, another person that was in the ring at the same time that I was in a ring was Sasha Banks. But that's a story for a different day.
Nice. I like the one thing I remember about us getting in the ring was because there were still fans everywhere. They didn't want it to seem like that was something you could just do. So they were very like, okay, let's get in, get our picture, and get out. And they made us take our shoes off and everything. So we had to go in there in our socks and
Yeah. That's specific ring etiquette though. You don't wear outside shoes in the ring.
yeah, 100%.
Now, Ben, one of the funniest things ever happened after this. Who did you go and want to get a photo with after this?
So I wanted to go and meet MJF after this show. So this was, I believe, AEW had been announced as being a thing, but hadn't officially launched yet, with its first show, I mean. And it was reported and known that MJF was going to be a part of AEW, and I think he just started to feature on Being the Elite or things like that. So I'd kind of seen a little bit of him, but I thought he was a pretty funny guy, and obviously his heel work is just incredible. But I think literally a couple of days before that show, a clip had just surfaced of MJF when I think he was a minor child star or something like that. He did some ads or TV roles. But there's a clip of him on this morning talk show singing You Are My Sunshine, which was just fantastic because he looks like such a little dweeb in this photo. And because he is such a jerk in his wrestling persona, that video surfacing just gave the fans so much fuel to just absolutely destroy him. So I remember in that show, when he came out for his match, there was just a chorus of people singing You Are My Sunshine to him during the match, which was fantastic. And he was doing his thing and just throwing everything right back. But yeah, he was someone that I really wanted to go and meet afterwards. So he'd set up at his table and we went and jumped in the line, and just watching his interactions with fans is just so entertaining. There'd be larger overweight fans in line going up to meet him, and he'd just be like, what do you want, fatso? And just completely destroying these poor people who were about to pay money to meet him. Fantastic.
I remember him telling the guy right in front of us that he smells absolutely disgusting and he needs to put on some deodorant.
I think he asked him if he was aware what deodorant was.
Now, you go up and start talking to him. And I remember this vividly because you're like, hey, how's it going? And he's like, what do you want? And
Yeah.
you asked for a photo with him. And his response was, yeah, it's called money. And you asked him how much he wanted. And he wanted $20 for a photo. And you're like, you give him the $20. And he's just like, let's get this over with.
Yeah, so because I didn't sort of know how I was going to handle it. I was like, oh, should I just try and play into it and be a jerk to him? But I'm like, no, I'll just try and be polite. And then once I was talking to him, he was just cracking me up anyway. So yeah, when he was just like, it's called money. I'm like, yeah, blah, 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 and paying him. And then for all of the photos that he would get, because obviously he does want to take photos and make his money at the table, but he just sort of just stand there like this and just look at the camera begrudgingly while the person stood next to him. He wouldn't pose or anything. So I got one nice photo standing behind him, like doing the classic mark point and smiling or whatever. But then the second one, I just gave him this like miserable, dirty look. I'll even try and find a photo that we can flash up of that moment. But that's one of my favorite photos I've got.
Yeah, that was my introduction to MJF also. And I'm just like, I am instantly a fan of this guy. He's the one person who doesn't break kayfabe like more than Chris Jericho.
Yeah. So I watched, not to keep mentioning them, but the Major Wrestling Figure podcast, they did this. I don't know if you've seen the holiday toy drive that they do every year.
Yeah.
Where they get fans to donate figures and give them to Toys for Tots for underprivileged kids, which is really cool. And this year they got a couple of guys to do like an autograph signing to attract people there. So they had like Taz and Tommy Dreamer and them, and MJF was one of them. And so this is like a huge charitable thing that they all do to kind of come together and give to those in need. And so people are making their way around. I think it was all free as well to like come and meet them once you were there and had to donate your toys. That was the only price to get in. But MJF was the one guy.
But for one wrestler, it wasn't free.
Yeah. He's still like charging people money to get photos, and people are bringing up their figures to get signed because that was an action figure collecting community. People had these nice new fresh figures and people are giving them to sign. He's just throwing them on the floor and just being a total dick.
Smudging the autograph after signing it. Yeah. Imagine an actual MJF autograph being him roughing up your box and smudging your autograph. Yeah. That's an authentic autograph right there. Um,
100%.
before we continue, let's talk about Streetcar Heroes.
Oh, are we pronouncing that right? I never know how to say it. Gyros, gyros, gyros. One of
Gyro.
them.
It's a soft
Yeah,
G.
there we go. Yeah. So they are like, yeah, just this little like burrito-y wrap kind of thing. I think they're Greek, right? And
Yeah.
they're just like they're like almost like a kebab. And oh, they were just this what we lived off. The street cart food in New York was just, and it was so cheap as well. Like because we were going to shows all day, we didn't really have time to stop for meals, so we just kind of pick up food as we went. And I remember literally just being able to get one of them or a hot dog and a drink or something for like $5 every night. I'm like, yes, they were so good.
Do you have any other stories from WrestleCon? We ran into Renee Young later that day.
She was super lovely. I was glad we got to meet her as well.
Who was the
But
Australian tag team you wound up talking to? Because they fucking knew you by name.
yeah, so one of the I'd say it'd be safe to say that he's the biggest Australian star at the moment. Robbie Eagles. He currently wrestles in New Japan and was in Bullet Club and now is part of Chaos with what was with Will Ospreay before Ospreay turned heel. But yeah, he's from Sydney as well. So I've only gotten to know him super casually just as a fan through going to shows over the last couple of years. And when I went up to him because I'd introduced myself a few times in Australia, but I figured that he meets lots of people, so he's not going to know who I am. But yeah, we went up at after the show at WrestleCon, and there was him and another guy called Adam Brooks, who were there as part of this tag match. And I just went up and I was like, "Hey, Robbie, awesome to see you, man. Like, I'm also from back home in Sydney, so it's really cool to be able to see you over here on a show like this." And he was like, "Yeah, I know, Ben." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, cool." So yeah, he's a great guy and he's so talented.
That was really fun for me too, because I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
I think that really wraps it up for WrestleCon, unless we left out anyone important, but I don't
No,
remember.
I think that does us, and then we went straight on to Takeover.
We did not. We made a pit stop on the way to Takeover.
Did we? Where did we go?
We went to the Ghostbuster house.
Oh, was that on that day? I thought that was the next day.
We overshot our stop getting us back to the Airbnb. We wound up going to the Ghostbuster house, took a picture of it, and then got back on the train and headed back to the apartment.
That's right. That's right.
But you and I, we wound up making it to NXT Takeover New York that night. And holy crap, that wound up being pay-per-view of the year for a lot of different wrestling websites.
Yeah, so before we even get to the show, I remember standing out the front of the Barclays Center, waiting to go in because, so yeah, that was on the first real full day that I was there. I'd only flown in the night before, but one of my best friends, Kane, was coming to join us as well. However, he had an extra day of work to do back home in Australia, so he flew out 24 hours after me. So he literally had to get off the plane, get in an Uber, send his bags in the Uber to meet his brother, my other friend Luke, at our place, and then carry on and literally go straight into Takeover. So we're waiting out the front of the Barclays Center, and I just see him come running at me from across the street and jump into my arms, and he's like, "I made it, I just got off the plane, let's fucking go."
So we were outside, we were waiting for Kane to show up, and I run into Adam Cleary from What Culture Wrestling. And
that's right.
He's with someone, he winds up just telling him to roll the camera they have, and they talk to me for a few minutes. I wind up properly predicting 5 matches on the main WrestleMania card, as well as telling them what matches I'm excited for NXT Takeover. And that footage never made its way to their website. So Adam Cleary, I'm taking this opportunity to call you out and get me that footage. You'll recognize this face, find that footage from before NXT Takeover New York and get it to me. It's probably not going to happen, but that's the best swing I can take at this right now. So we go inside. NXT Takeover New York. Holy fuck. This pay-per-view was amazing. The first match on the card was the War Raiders versus Aleister Black and Ricochet. And just the entrances from this match were so amazing. You got the War Raiders coming out with like an army of people beating drums and their horns blaring. There's low-lying fog. It's insane.
That's one thing I remember is, as I'm sure viewers of this know, Greg is a lighting technician and a huge theater buff. And he's just telling me, Ben, the cold smoke sits and the hot smoke rises. And he's filling me in about all the intricacies of the entrances and the lights and the fog. And it's so cool.
Next, we get Ricochet's entrance, which is just brilliant. They have this awesome circular lighting that surrounds him. We don't see him get his entrance on the main roster in full quality anymore, but NXT Ricochet was so good. It's just a tragedy how he's treated on the main roster.
Oh, yeah, that's the story of many NXT call-ups.
But like every NXT call-up except for like Seth Rollins and Kevin Owens.
Yeah.
And, you know, the Four Horsewomen. That's about it.
Yeah.
Aleister Black has a fantastic entrance as well.
He is like one of my favorite entrance songs is Aleister Black's song. Is someone who's a fan of heavy music. He is the first time I think he made his NXT debut a couple of years prior at the Mania weekend takeover in Orlando, and I was with Kane for that as well. We were sat there and his music starts playing and I was just like, oh my god, this rules. And yeah, his entrance is just a spectacle.
I rewatched this pay-per-view as prep for this little conversation today, and the crowd is chanting the lyrics to his song as he's coming out to the ring.
So good. Yeah.
And this match was like an absolute clinic in cruiserweight tag team wrestling when all four of the guys aren't even technically cruiserweights, let alone two of the guys being 250 plus pounds. And these guys are all over the place in this match.
And there was so many just intricate tag team spots that were just people flying everywhere but working in with each other's spots. Such a display of just fantastic wrestling.
Now, Ben, do you remember the fucked up thing that was going on during this match?
The fucked up thing going on during this match? I don't.
One of the sections, they were off to our right, had a light shining in their face, and they were extremely vocal about it to the point where something got done about it. Because halfway through this match, during a cool down spot, the entire arena erupts when this light is moved out of this section's face to the point where people are chanting, "You deserve it."
Yeah, and the amount of times that something like that happens, it happened 24 hours later or 48 hours later at Mania in the Styles-Orton match. Like, they just didn't learn with their production of lighting.
Roughly the same exact thing happens 2 days later at WrestleMania during AJ and Orton. And as a lighting technician, both times I was like, what are you guys doing? This match continues. The finish is fantastic. But post-match, Ricochet and Black, they take a bow. They do the hugs in the ring with the War Raiders. And it's a typical, like, we're done in NXT match. We basically viewed Ricochet and Aleister's last good match, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Did you know that Ricochet had a WWE title match earlier this year?
Did he?
Yeah, against Brock in Saudi Arabia. And we all know what happened there.
Oh, yeah, God. I've just erased that from my memory.
I actually have a note in the doc we're sharing right now. Removing those two from NXT was the dumbest thing ever. Ricochet was also the United States champion. Do you remember that?
I do remember that, but just like, no words.
Next on that card, Velveteen Dream defended the North American Championship against Matt Riddle. And for a second match on the card, this match was phenomenal.
So good. And Dream's entrance where he did the Statue of Liberty get up and so cool.
Every person Dream has a match with. It's just constant back and forth with the mind games.
Yeah, such good psychology and that mental game.
We see some great stuff in this match, though. We see this awesome Dream Hulk up towards the end. We see a Rainmaker elbow into a Bro Mission. We see this awesome German suplex from Matt Riddle going right into a floating bro. And we see a roll-up finish, which I freaking love. If like the heat of the match is that high, I love seeing a roll-up finish when you're expecting a real like high impact finishing move.
Yeah, because it's like one just gets it on the other person and just gets away with it.
Oh, it's so brilliant. Next was like one of the top matches of the weekend as well, let alone the main event. But mid card is usually like mid NXT Takeover card is the match they want to send you home talking about. And that was Walter versus Pete Dunne for the United Kingdom Championship. And this match literally slapped. This match was so good live.
Literally slapped. Holy fuck. Walter's chops. Jesus.
I rewatched it yesterday, and it's like I couldn't even do play-by-play and take notes, but I will just tell you this match is absolutely brilliant.
So phenomenal. So good.
Next, we saw Shayna Baszler defend the NXT Women's Championship against Bianca Belair, Io Shirai, and Kairi Sane. As awesome as this match was, there was something they teased throughout the match, and they don't really let us see, is Io Shirai and Kairi Sane. There's a few little teases throughout the match of them going at each other, almost like they were going to let it happen, but we don't really see those two have that exploding moment in this match.
Yeah, I remember that match because being in the position on the card, following Walter and Dunn and being just before Gargano and Cole, that would be traditionally the cool down match. But I remember that being pleasantly surprising. Like, that was really good as well.
Yeah, in no way did this match cool the crowd down. And that's
not at all.
That's what's great about an NXT takeover. They give you 5 matches and they give you 4 to 5 star quality on all of those matches. And you still go home not exhausted.
No, and the opening match just puts the crowd on 10 and then they just stay there the entire show.
Well, they send you home not exhausted if you've, haven't been up since 4 a.m. that morning.
Yes.
Weirdly enough, the women's match from that pay-per-view was the weakest on the card, but it was still
by no means
brilliant. Yeah. Finally, our main event, Johnny Gargano versus Adam Cole, 2 out of 3 falls match. This match got match of the year on multiple pro wrestling websites, and it delivered. Holy crap.
So I remember the journey of this match, to tie back into you just saying that we'd been up for so long and I just come off the back of my travel day and everything. That whole day I was just running on excitement because I'd barely slept. I'd had the 22-hour travel day. And then the crescendo of this match, I remember sort of built kind of gradually. Like the first fall happened and then the second picked up a little bit, but it wasn't really until the third fall of that match that it really picked up. And I think that fall was where it earned its match of the year status. But I remember when we were sitting there watching the first 2 falls, I was even just like, no, I'm so excited. But I was nodding off because I was just so tired from my travel and everything. But by the time the third fall came around, I'd completely forgotten about that and was just like, holy fuck, this is so good.
This NXT crowd was also incredibly divided. I remember more of the crowd actually chanting for Adam Cole.
Yeah. Who was the heel at the time, and Gargano was the most popular babyface in NXT.
Yeah, and it made it such a better back and forth that I didn't care who won, but I'm glad Johnny Gargano won.
Yeah, no, that was just a perfect story. Nice. You bought that shirt at that event, didn't you?
No, I didn't, because they sold out and I had to pre-order it online afterwards.
That's right. But then he has the Gargano has his victory moment, which is the pinnacle of his chase to the title. And as he celebrating on the stage, Ciampa comes on out, Candice comes on out, and they have that little moment. And that was just such a perfect moment. And I remember looking to my left and Greg just being like, Ben, I'm crying.
I wasn't crying. You were crying.
Oh, it was such an emotional moment though. So good.
It was so great. It's the way to close a show, really.
Yeah, that was fantastic storytelling.
And that's a fun thing about NXT. Even after most main events, they give you just a little bit more to just keep you watching at the very end, even up until the moment where they show that signature on the corner of the screen.
I think that almost became a little running joke with stuff specifically involving Gargano and Ciampa, as they'd throw the thing up and then you'd be like, oh, what's going to happen now?
It's not over yet.
No, I think on the stream of this match, you can literally see Johnny standing there with the title and the signature pop up, and you can just see him mouth, he's behind me, isn't he? And he turns around and Ciampa's there, but he's celebrating instead of his usual stabbing in the back.
Oh my God, they did such an awesome job with that pay-per-view.
Yeah.
So exhausted as hell, We wind up getting pizza at some pizza restaurant and then eventually make it back to the Airbnb for the night. We get about 6 hours of sleep before we jump into Access the next morning.
Yep, and I think you're right. We probably went to bed at about 2 and then had to be up for an 8 a.m. Access session.
And it's a little sad, but it's kind of funny that this happened. We went to this Access together and spent literally like no time together because we were off doing different things.
Yeah, so I think because I'd got a VIP ticket to go meet Seth Rollins. Obviously, I'm going to go do that. So yeah, we pretty much got there and was like, all right, this is my line and this is your line. I guess we'll see you at the end.
Well, you went off to meet Seth Rollins, and even at 8 a.m. that morning, they were already running matches in the little NXT area they set up. During that match, up close, I got to see Drew Gulak wrestle. I got to see Tyler Bate and Trent Seven wrestle. And just seeing like those three faces, those are like three of my favorite like hard grappling wrestlers that really haven't let go of the style of like the grappling of wrestling. And those three guys really keep me watching some of the content.
And I think there's been a couple of times over the years, Access is just, it's like a wrestling Disneyland. It's just so cool. It's like sensory overload, all this stuff's going on. And a couple of times over the years, because they do have matches constantly running in the warehouse. So you've just gone to meet some people, you've gone through like the museum of displays and gone to some of the cool activities. And you just kind of think, oh, just need to catch my breath for a second. I'll just go see whatever's happening in the ring and sit down for there. And then this fucking awesome match happens in front of you when you're just planning on taking a break.
Yeah, there's so much to do at Access. If you ever attend a WrestleMania, go to Access. There's so much to do.
Yeah.
There was a funny moment where you wound up waiting in one line because you really wanted to meet Mark Henry. You missed out on meeting him at WrestleCon the day before. You're waiting in line to meet Mark Henry again. I'm over in a different line waiting to meet Sami Zayn. And at the same time, they switched the shifts on all the people doing the meet and greets. So sadly, for the second time in 2 days, you missed out on meeting Mark Henry.
Well, that I shot myself in the foot for that one because I knew he was going to be at Access on the Saturday morning. And the way Access works is you buy your admission to Access, but then anyone you meet in there is just included in that ticket price. Conversely, WrestleCon, you buy the admission for a much cheaper rate, but then have to pay each wrestler individually. So I had the chance on the Friday at WrestleCon to go meet Mark Henry. And I was like, oh, I could pay $50 to meet him now, but no, I know he's going to be at Access tomorrow, and I've already got my ticket for that, so I'll just meet him there. But it was not to be. I didn't think that I might not get that chance because his line was so long, and as we said, they switched the shifts on us, and bummer.
You know, speaking of Mark Henry, I'm actually going to take a quick second to plug one of my past episodes of What Did I Just Watch? Episode 10, where my friend Kristen and I discuss the career of Mark Henry. Check it out when you're done watching this. So, as I mentioned, I'm waiting in line to meet Sami Zayn, and the shifts wind up switching right around that time. But I kind of wound up meeting someone a little better than Sami Zayn. That's right. I met the B team.
Oh, I thought you were going to say the Undisputed Era. That wasn't that one.
I was joking. I met the Undisputed Era.
Oh, you did? Okay.
They were so awesome to see. It was Kyle O'Reilly and Bobby Fish. Sadly, they didn't have a match the night before.
No, yeah, well, they did the run-in for the Cole Gargano, didn't they?
That's all they did. And they're like one of my favorite tag teams.
I think my switch out when they did that shift change, I think I was going to meet Mark Henry, and I can't even remember who the other people were there, but I think they brought in Andrade and maybe Ruby Riott and one other person. So it ended up being okay. I'm still glad to meet.
The other person you wound up meeting was Tony Nese.
Yes, it was. It was
yes,
Tony Nese.
Because he specifically said to you, oh, you're from Australia? You must be rooting for Buddy Murphy tomorrow.
Yeah, and I was like, yeah, sorry, dude.
Now, Ben, do you remember the one thing we actually did together at this Access?
I do. So one of the really cool displays they have at Access is it's sort of like a mini Comic-Con reveal for Mattel, the company that makes all the figures. So they have a display of pieces that are going to be coming up over the next few months, and they've got a few of the guys from Mattel there, which is something that we were able to go and do together. Yeah,
we went up, talked to Bill McKenna for a few minutes. I showed him pictures from my action figure collection, and he was incredibly impressed.
Yeah, That was really cool to get to meet the person. I think I'd met him one time prior to that as well, but just to be like, hey, like I'm such a big fan of what you do, and it's cool to be able to meet him like that. One cool moment I had, I think it was the year before in New Orleans. There's Steve, corporate Steve, for anyone who follows Mattel team, who is also Action Figure Attack. He was there at the booth that year, and I was just walking around. I hadn't even seen him there because I don't even think he wasn't that much of a public figure at that point. I don't even think I knew what he looked like, but I was just checking out all the displays and everything, and he just comes up to me and he's like, "Are you Blue Lightning Wrestling Figs on Instagram?" And I'm like, yes, I am. And he introduced himself, and that was a cool moment. I was like, oh, hey, dude. And again, it was cool to be able to meet someone from Mattel who puts all their work into what we love to collect.
Well, Ben, you spend enough money on ringside, you're definitely on their radar.
100%.
So, dude, after all this access stuff, House of Glory, Culture Clash 19 in Queens, New York. Holy crap. This show was just as great as NXT.
And it was such a sleeper of a show. I think this was another one that we just didn't have anything on at that point in the day, and we saw it pop up and we're like, oh, there's a few cool names on there. Let's check it out and see what happens. And it ended up being fantastic.
Oh, yeah. There was a handful of awesome AEW names on this card. We were fourth row floor for this.
Mm-hmm. I think as well, for people who don't know, House of Glory, I think, was one of the promotions that the Young Bucks kind of came up in and had a few of their very early successful matches in.
Now, Ben, I have the whole card in a link in our Google Doc, but I just want to see if there's any specific matches you remember before we look at that.
So, all right, without looking at just going off my memory, the one that obviously stands out was the tag match with Private Party, who, of course, now we know from their AEW success, but that was the first time I'd ever seen them, hadn't read a thing about them. And I think at the beginning of the match, they came out, and we were just like, oh, they're like just a different version of the Street Profits, who are also great, by the way. But then by the end of the match,
they are a better version of the Street Profits.
Yeah, by the end of that match, everyone was so impressed. We were like, whoa, that was so cool.
Yeah, they went up against David Starr and someone else. And halfway through that match, like David Starr and his partner wound up rickrolling the audience.
That's right. I love David Starr. He's so good. So one other thing, obvious memory that I have from this card was getting to see the Great Muta wrestle. That was fantastic because he's just such a legend.
He was so slow and grandfather-like with his movements, though. He literally got in the ring at the end of the match to do his finisher and get the pinfall.
Yeah, it was just entrance, green mist, the end.
We did get to see, on top of Pentagon Jr., we did get to see Ray Phoenix. He went one-on-one with Ken Broadway. That match was awesome. I've never seen so much bouncing off the ropes in a match before. And this is the first time I've seen Phoenix wrestle.
Yeah, Phoenix is just incredible. He's like silk in the ring. He's just, the stuff that he can do is just, fantastic.
Now, weirdly enough, my favorite match on the card that you might remember was Mantakia versus Kikotaro.
Yeah.
And this match was hilarious. I've never seen a wrestling match like this before. And if I can find a reliable hard copy of this match, I plan on doing that match as a future episode of this show.
Oh, that would be perfect for this show. It was just so left field, hilarious and ridiculous.
Oh my God. We can't even describe it. The only thing I really recall about this match is Kikotaro, getting one of these ready and poking his opponent in the bum. And I've never seen that in a wrestling match before. And it was so fucking hilarious.
The trope that I remember from that match was, is it Kikotaro?
Yeah. Kikotaro, I think, was the guy in the mask. Yeah.
So Kikotaro was playing on the trope of referees constantly asking someone if they were ready to submit and give up. So he had him in a hold or whatever, and the ref's asking Kikotaro, do you want to give up? Can you continue? And he's been going, yes, no, I can keep going. I keep going. And then it kept building. Do you want to give up? 20%. And do you want to give up? 90%.
It was helpful for us being that close too, to be able to hear them say that.
Well, that was one of the things I love about shows like that in an intimate sort of room, that just the atmosphere of no matter where you are in the room, you can hear them in the ring and you get that, sort of intimate experience, which is really cool.
Now, after that show, we wound up hopping trains back to the apartment. And then that night, we find ourselves at the Barclays again for the WWE Hall of Fame ceremony. And not even Hall of Fame related, the one big thing that happened that night was, let's talk about it.
The Bret Hart incident. So just quickly to touch on why this was such a spectacle as well, but without the Bret Hart incident, just going to the Hall of Fame is one of my favorite parts of the Mania weekend, because like we were saying about WrestleCon, it's cool just to watch everyone act like human beings, and like the wrestlers get dressed up and you can see them interacting with each other and hanging out with their friends, and it's cool to just watch them be human beings. So I always like that. But with the Bret Hart thing, what that added to was when Bret and Natalya were in the ring giving their acceptance speech for Bret and Anvil going into the Hall of Fame, was that fucking idiot who just jumped the guardrail, sprinted up into the ring. I think this was the first year as well that they'd had the ring as the focal point of the Hall of Fame ceremony rather than the stage. So this idiot just runs in the ring, makes a beeline for Bret and just tackles him. And I just remember, because we were in the nosebleeds for the Hall of Fame as well. We got real cheap tickets that were just right at the top.
Not to mention, we've been up since 8 a.m. and we're like totally running on fumes at that point. Listening to a Bret Hart Hall of Fame speech before that shit happened, we were both ready to pass out.
Yeah, and because we had such like a bird's eye view and everything, I just remember glancing down, and it just, before I even realized what was happening, this dude's just sprinted into the ring, tackled Bret, and within seconds, everything just kicked off, and it was just pure fucking anarchy.
The entire arena erupted.
Oh, it was actually, like, obviously you never want to see that kind of thing happen, but I'm so glad we were there, because it was such a cool moment. Like, obviously, thank God the dude was just being an idiot and tackling Bret. He didn't have a weapon or anything, and everybody was okay. Obviously, if something bad had happened, it would have been a tragedy, but in light of everyone being okay, I was so glad that we got to see that, because I've never seen an entire room full of such important people come together in this like community and brotherhood to defend everyone. Like, this dude's jumped in the ring, tackled Bret. I think the New Day was sitting front row. They were just in there straight away.
Immediately on this dude.
Like, everyone who was there, I think the first people on the scene were like, I'm getting goosebumps thinking about this because it was so cool.
Me too.
But Shane McMahon and Travis Brown, Ronda Rousey's husband, were just on this dude because they were in the front row. But like, because in the Hall of Fame ceremony, everyone's seated pretty much in order of importance. All like the main eventers are at the front and the McMahons are at the front. In like the 15th row or something, Rockstar Spud or Drake Maverick just breaks the fucking land speed record and gets straight in the ring to just get in there, and he's like 5 foot nothing, and he's pulling dudes off out of the way and trying to make sure he controls everything. And there were just it was just chaos. There was Harry Smith was in there just laying shots into this guy.
Who was the real hero of this segment, though? Who was the one person that the internet was talking about after this segment?
The real hero of this segment. So I think New Day sort of got in there, diffused things, and then pulled Natalya out to look after her. I think Davey Boy Smith Jr. is laying into this guy. Ali is in there. Edge is in there. A bunch of people. Braun pulling this guy out of the ring, just trying to get him out of the way. And I think Ali was even one of the people, because he used to be a cop. So I think he was in there sort of leading the charge, like trying to control the situation. And as someone's got him in a headlock walking off, one Mr. Dash Wilder, who was, I think, sporting a Hitman jacket because he's a huge Bret Hart fan, comes in there and just is walking next to this guy for a couple of paces and just thinks, this is my chance. I'm not letting this guy get off scot-free. And boom, pops him straight in the head.
Pops him straight in the face.
Oh, good. And everyone just lost their shit for that. Yes, yes, yes.
Awesome. And they wound up losing the tag team titles the next night on the pre-show.
Yeah, but that was just because it was all over in like a minute or less, and it was just so cool to see everyone come together to save one of the people that was part of their community. And yeah, such a high energy, just crazy moment.
It was insane.
Mm-hmm.
And really, like, besides that, like, one part was great at the end. I really loved the DX induction at the end. There were water guns. They were using Vince's name, which he wound up hating.
I think as well, because it was a huge deal for Billy Gunn to be able to be part of that, having been announced as a trainer for AEW. So I think Triple H even openly like made a dig at Billy for being part of AEW in the speech. He
referred to AEW as being a pissant company.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was fantastic. That was a great way to close the show on top of what had already happened.
I remember that the lasting image of everyone walking out of the arena when everything had died down is Triple H running through the crowd, seeking out Baron Corbin to just drench him with this super soaker.
That was fantastic. I'm glad we were there for that. Well, yeah, interesting thing about what happened with the Bret Hart thing, at that same time, New Japan and Ring of Honor were hosting a show at the Garden. And Enzo and Moray and Cass did a very similar run-in. And then they were never talked about again in wrestling, pretty much.
Which I think was quite controversial because they made it look like, as you said, the same kind of situation where they did a run-in from the crowd. But I think the bookers of Ring of Honor knew about it and, like, well, obviously organized for them to do it, but didn't tell the New Japan bookers and didn't tell any of the guys in the ring. Yeah. So I think Tama Tonga was in there and was just like, what the fuck is happening? And thought that it was a legit shoot.
Yeah.
Yeah, apparently that was just chaos as well.
Oh my God. They did not handle that well.
Nope.
Now, sadly, you and I didn't sit together during WrestleMania. So I wound up meeting my friend Henry that I'm going to have on a future episode. And we're going to get into the whole WrestleMania card. And we're even going to get into what happens after. And Ben, we might actually bring you back for that little conversation. Because what happens to us after WrestleMania was ridiculous. And you're going to have to, you're going to have to those of you watching, you're going to have to, settle and wait for that future episode for that fantastic story.
It's a good.
We do have one more little segment before we sign off today. Ben thought it would be a really fun idea to share some phrases with me that are very common in Australian speak, but not necessarily so common in American speech. So, Ben, what do you have for me?